Joining us now is the panel, and I only want to talk about this for one more question, but I do want to share what the New York Times spokesperson said to me after Trump said this about David Sanger and CNN and Times. Quote, President Trump seems to misunderstand this fundamental role for a free press and a democracy, and particularly its responsibility to examine the reality underlying government pronouncements and question their accuracy if the evidence points that way. It's independent reporting and the core of our responsibilities. Jamil, I'm sure that you're not a big fan of this accusing reporters of treason thing.
No, I mean, it's crazy. Look, the reality is that the whole point we have a First Amendment, the whole reason we have a free press, the reason we have news media is we want them to question our politicians. We want them to question the story, the narrative. It's exactly what the conservative media that I'm on all the time does when it questioned Joe Biden and Barack Obama, when they said things that weren't accurate, when they talked about the economy and how good it was doing. That's what you want the news media doing, and calling it treasonous is actually the opposite of what America believes in. It's the opposite of what presidents should be doing. It's the opposite of what our Constitution and our entire system of government teaches us.
And Sabrina, having been at the Pentagon when the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan was going on, I'm sure you were not a fan of a lot of what we were reporting or even the tone with which we said it, but you never accused us of being treasonous.
No, I didn't. And there were many stories that were reported by CNN, by other outlets that we certainly took issue with, whether it was the withdrawal from Afghanistan or whether it was the war in Ukraine and then post, some of our capabilities surging in the Middle East and, especially against the fight against the Houthis. I remember, we were saying we're degrading their capabilities and there'd be reporting saying, well, actually, you're not. And of course, you can have frustrations with that. But in no means would we ever say that reporting or asking us questions was wrong or treasonous. And I think that was also the point of having those briefings and the podium. Those are the reasons why journalists are there to ask those tough questions to an administration.
Yeah. Let's turn to something Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz said today during a panel discussion in Germany. Quote, I am a great admirer of America, but my admiration is not growing at the moment. However, I wouldn't recommend that my children go to the U.S. today, get their education there, and work there simply because a social climate has suddenly developed there, unquote. Jamil, your reaction?
Well, I mean, that's ridiculous. Look, the reality is that a lot of people want to come to America because America is still the greatest country in the world. We may have our problems. We may have our disagreements politically. We may have the president talk about treason and reporters. But the reality is that Germans should come here. Living in Germany, you're not going to have a successful opportunity to grow your capabilities, your skill set. You're not going to be able to innovate. The reality is that this country is still the greatest country in the world. We're the ones developing the cutting-edge AI. We're the ones with the most intellectual population in the world. We do ourselves harm, no question. But the idea that the world's population doesn't want to or shouldn't come here is ridiculous, and Friedrich Merz is wrong about that.
Let's talk about what President Trump said when it came to Taiwan and China today, because the president said he made no commitment either way when it came to whether the U.S. would defend China, and then also wouldn't really commit about whether or not he would sell weapons to Taiwan. I know this is a complicated issue for every president, and people thought that President Biden was over his skis when he called Xi a dictator. You guys had to walk that back. He said he would absolutely defend Taiwan if China attacked. I mean, that was, I remember that causing a lot of agita, sleepless nights. But what do you make of all this?
Well, what President Trump said today would essentially be a break in U.S. policy. I mean, for a very long time, and like you said, many presidents have wrestled with this idea of strategic ambiguity, and it's a really hard line to walk. But if the president says that he might be reviewing the idea that we're going to hold back a weapons sales package to Taiwan, not only would that break with U.S. policy, but that would give President Xi a win. I mean, that's exactly what China wants, and that is exactly what the summit. That's what he wanted to come out of the summit, was for the United States to say, you know what, we're going to put a pause on our support. And I do think the president walked into these meetings in China with the weaker hand. The war in Iran loomed over the president. And I think what the president really wanted to come out of these meetings was China to say to Iran, you're going to open up the strait and you're going to do it now. And they didn't walk away with that commitment. They walked away with a few trade agreements. And, I guess President Xi's going to send some roses back. But at the end of the day, if the commitment is that the president is going to review arms sales to Taiwan, that is a huge victory to China.
What do you think?
Well, look, to be clear, the president said he's looking at it. He didn't make any determinations. And let's be clear, President Trump has sent the largest package of any weapons sale ever in history to Taiwan. So the idea is not doubling down on it. Still unclear. We'll see how this plays out. If he does that, that would be a huge mistake. But it's not clear he's going to do that. and he has been very aggressive and lean forward on the Taiwan front. I do agree that he went into this thing with the wrong idea to bring all these CEOs. Not a great look, looking like we're the supplicants here. That was a mistake. He gave away. I mean, he views himself as a top negotiator, and yet he keeps giving away negotiating leverage, whether it's with the Iranians or the Russians over Ukraine or with China over trade. I don't get the play. The right play with all these people, Iranians, the Russians, the Chinese, is play from strength. Donald Trump knows how to do that. For whatever reason, he doesn't seem to be playing that out right now. He's got to go back to his normal move, negotiate from a position of strength. He's not doing it.
All right. Thanks to both of you. Really appreciate it.